What would that mean for those little brains? What even are they? How complex could they get? We'll be diving into some more specifics with regards to this kind of thing deeper on in the iceberg. Neuralink. You've probably heard of Elon Musk's latest project in the news, that being Neuralink. I'm not the best to talk about all the possible issues that can arise from technology like this, but implanting your brain to control devices simply out of convenience could be a step too far. Now, there are things that are objectively amazing about this technology. There are going to be people with disabilities that can get some function back, or maybe even become capable of things entirely new for them. Some devices require quick thinking and might be used more efficiently. But what happens when the person you trust to put a second brain inside your head ends up being a bad actor? What happens when every single job requires you to install one of these in your head and it ceases to be your choice? Let's say somewhere down the line we take a critical job like air traffic control and implement technology like this, so ATC workers can communicate more efficiently and make air travel safer. Well, what if that produces results so good that more and more industries follow, and eventually we get to the point where companies won't hire you if you don't have something like this installed and don't know how to use it? Clearly, in all likelihood, we probably won't be forced to install this kind of thing. But what if we're strong-armed into out of convenience that bleeds into necessity? You can make the argument that this happened with cell phones or credit cards, and you basically need one to live in a lot of places. Modern housing solutions. We have a lot of people that we need to house, and that's kind of a problem. The American housing economy is absolute booty cheeks right now, and I'm sure that's the same for a lot of places around the world. Rising rent costs have led people to live in tiny homes, and that's cool and all for a starter home, but also such a terrifying precedent. I'm not here to have a conversation on housing in general. That's a giant debate, and I'm not qualified to have it. This isn't about 15-minute cities or anything like that either, and I'm not here to debate whether or not urban sprawl is bad. What I'm here to say is that I think it's reasonable to suggest that tiny housing, or getting used to having no space, will be shoved down our throats by people for their convenience. We may live to see a cultural revolution in terms of housing, where people learn to expect and even work for a box that's 10 feet across to live in. I'm not entirely a shill for this post-war American urban sprawl. I'm not gonna act like this is perfect, but I'm also not gonna act like I want to work a 9 to 5 and come back to this tiny home. If it's a stepping stone for some people, awesome, and it could be a good solution to homelessness, if of course paired with the other treatments that those people require, but it can't be a permanent thing for everyone. I just think we should be decently wary about these kinds of neighborhoods. Subscriptions, financing, and surge pricing. This entry is another broad one, but I want to take a second to talk about how we're moving towards extremely predatory transaction plans. I mean, we live in an age where you're encouraged to finance your fucking pizza. Everything is becoming subscription-based. Sometimes it's convenient, and other times it's dystopian garbage. Surge pricing. Wendy's just announced they may experiment with changing the price of a burger based on the time of day and other factors. Imagine a world where you try to go into a store and buy a cold glass of lemonade on a summer day, and the cashier looks you dead in the eyes and goes, it's 80 degrees out, it's noon and you're sweaty, so this is gonna be $12.99. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and analyze these things from like a financial perspective. I just want to take a second to point out that we're moving away from being able to buy things traditionally, and thus we're losing control over them. We thought subscriptions were convenient at first, but the day we have to subscribe to literally everything will be a terrible
Seit gestern tut mir der Bauch weh.
Deepfakes. A lot of AI content will be discussed on today's iceberg, as you can probably imagine. Deepfakes in particular are of great concern, not just for, what you're probably thinking about, but imagine not being able to trust any video. That's what I'm concerned with here. Falsified evidence with deepfake materials presented in court, fake speeches from our leaders inciting violence, whatever it may be. There is going to come a time where deepfake videos are so realistic that they're a genuine problem. I can't say where that line is specifically, but I would hope you'd agree with me that that's true.
I just dropped like 150 milligram edible, and I'm feeling fucking zooted. Honestly, I'm feeling the neck on the top floor right now. I'm about to design like 30 new fucking space cars and get us to Mars.
Virtual reality for animals. Something I've seen here and there, albeit with slight variations, is the use of virtual reality to ease the minds of livestock. I think there's a beautiful irony in this situation. It's actually almost funny. How weird does it look to see a cow in a giant factory being stuffed with garbage and led to its slaughter, wearing VR goggles to pretend he's in a pretty field in Scotland? One could argue this is emblematic of many situations that humans find themselves in, being fed fantasies that can't be lived, that can be experienced in part, to make us comfortable if we're fed to slaughter. I feel like at this stage this isn't terrible, but I don't know, it's just a weird thing to see a cow wearing a VR headset. Just think about it for a sec. AI Church. This entry is referring specifically to one article that I found out of Germany, where Jonas Zimmermann, a German philosopher and theologian, combined several AI-related tools, mostly just chatbots, and organized them into a sermon made mostly from AI. Basically, Protestant Christians watch this event, which, in my opinion, is more of an art spectacle than anything, where these chatbots delivered extremely deadpan statements about faith, really not saying anything meaningful. The chatbots urge the audience to keep having faith, understand that now is the time, and to not fear death. These claims don't really have any theological basis and just seem like, well, exactly what you expect out of ChatGPT if you asked it to produce a sermon. If actually injected with theological knowledge, it might make sense rhetorically, but overall it's just weird. The reason this is on the list is because, like everything with AI, it may be crawling now, but it'll run soon. And there are plenty of people out there, as history has demonstrated, who can be taken advantage of by religious rhetoric. It's an extremely powerful tool of manipulation. Explain why seemingly normal people can join cults and devote themselves to meaningless garbage. Why then is it a good idea to render this power to an AI? At best, people would use this tool to boast their ability to control people, and at worst, the AI would just do it itself. It's kind of a weird thing that I'm not particularly excited about existing, I suppose. Awful urban development. This is kind of a sidestep of our modern housing solutions entry, but this one's kind of presented as a critique of modern city planning. What I'm referring to right now are these concrete behemoths, giant roundabouts or highway exchanges that are being implemented as driving demand's increase. I put this on here not because they're a problem now necessarily, but just because I think it's funny how much these things have compounded and grown over the years. And I only wonder how big they'll actually get. Again, not the most giant problem right now, but I really want to be able to drive my car without having to think of 100 different places to get off at an exit or having 80 people on top of or below me. Future animal farming. I'm gonna just say it, I love to eat meat. I have no plans of being vegan, ever. Eating animals is tied to human society and culture, and it has been for literally thousands of years. We shouldn't stop doing it. But we can recognize that it's getting less and less sustainable, and that factory farms are absolutely terrible and disgusting. I'm personally not opposed to lab-grown meat just on the supposition that it's not natural. I mean, if it works and it tastes the same, I really don't care. What I'm concerned with regarding this entry is these abominations. Parts of an animal grown just for food, growing only the edible parts of a chicken for efficiency's sake. If this works, great, but I just feel like something's wrong about it. I mean, imagine if these things experience some sort of consciousness. Imagine seeing these abhorrent creations at the same scale as animals in factory farms now. Thousands and thousands of chickens processed every day, being born into this shell with no eyes or mouth, only to be raised, killed, and processed. This isn't something that's terrifying if it's just used for food, but I just don't know how I feel about the idea of being able to grow specific parts of animals. It just feels really weird. Space advertising. Ever seen this photo right here? Imagine you're looking out at the night sky where you should be treated to a beautiful expanse of stars and other celestial bodies shining across your vision, and then you see a fucking can of Pepsi. Right now I'm talking about billboards in space. The feasibility of something like this is growing. It's not a technological dream anymore. This could actually happen. And while generally there are light pollution laws and stuff like that, don't be surprised when companies who bankroll Congress lobby to get this kind of thing done. I can very much see the argument being made that in places like large cities, which already have enough light pollution to block out the night sky, that there's nothing to conserve, and therefore you should be allowed to have this type of advertising in dense urban areas. Again, I think we'd be repulsed by it today, but if you give society enough time and watches nearly every ounce of space that exists becomes infested with advertising, that this could actually happen. Metaverse vacations. Recently, there's been a body of news articles being written which suggest that metaverse vacations could be a thing soon enough. This to me is a major red flag. To me, I see these articles as the beginning steps of desensitization to how awful this idea is, and how it's conditioning an audience of people that looking at something through a VR headset is going to actually replicate a family vacation. I mean, this should offend you if you can't afford to see the pyramids, for example. It's companies like Meta outright saying, don't worry that you can't actually travel, you're stupid enough that looking at a picture of this thing is the same thing. You're taking something as fun as a vacation, where you can take an adventure and surround yourself with a new culture and bastardizing it into yet another spoon-fed pleasure fest from your living room. You won't try the food, you won't meet the people, you won't be there. If we actually start parading this around as a legitimate thing, it's a sign that we're yet again forgetting the human. I really hope this idea never takes off in any meaningful way. Dead internet. You've likely heard of the dead internet theory, which is becoming more and more reality each day. Our AI technology is making it more and more possible that literally everything on the internet, sometimes being claimed as human-made, is just coming from bot traffic and AI-generated stuff. It would mean that something as cool as the internet, which can be used for fostering communities and preserving culture, would just be a cesspool of AI garbage, recycling the same opinions and eliminating discourse. Something I find absolutely hilarious that I had to put into this video somewhere was that when I started researching this meme, I was looking for examples of this meme being used so I could, take those man-made horrors and research them. And what I started to find on Google image search was this. Look at this garbage. What's wrong with it? Well, it's AI generated. It doesn't make sense. It physically resembles this meme, but thematically these photos are empty. There's literally AI content of this meme being generated. It's the most ironic thing I've ever heard. Worm Brain. OpenWorm is a company dedicated to digitally replicating a worm down to every last neuron. They're up to a pretty good start. You can go look at their virtual C. elegans worm on their website and play around with it. This is just a fun diagram, you might say, but then they actually coded accurate worm behavior into a Lego robot. Having a project this advanced and then just stuffing it into a Lego Mindstorm spot is hilarious to me. Anyways, the project is still going, but it's wild to think that even with relatively not complex organisms, we could hypothetically discover all of the synaptic weights in their brains and fully remake it digitally. Imagine if we could just make animals. That's insane. Eater, or Energetically Autonomous Tactical Robot, is a project created by Robotic Technology Incorporated, incredible name, by the way, alongside Cyclone Power Technologies to demonstrate how a robot could fuel itself with biomass, which would mean that, theoretically, under the right conditions, it could operate indefinitely. This concept is really cool, and maybe could provide itself useful in certain situations. But pivoting away from the idea of it being able to fuel itself and looking at what it actually feeds off of biomass, there was a great conspiracy when this came out that these could somehow be able to eat humans, which this clearly isn't designed to do. Although, according to the creators of Eater, it is able to consume chicken. So, I don't know, do with that information what you will. Dead spider robots. This entry refers to a development in necrobots hailing from Rice University, where scientists, for some reason, were able to robotically reanimate the corpse of spiders to make them into claw machines, just like those ones at the arcade. Anyways, in the paper published by these researchers in a journal called Advanced Science, they suggested that this paved the way for making, quote, biodegradable grippers for small objects. The lead researcher here made a pretty good point. People may be put off by the dead spider, but from an engineering standpoint, spiders function in a fascinating way. The researchers showed how to manipulate the hydraulic system that spiders use in a couple of trials I'm showing now. Perhaps most fascinatingly, the spiders were able to perform the gripping task upwards of 100 times, lifting around 130% of their body weight. There was a really interesting speculation here that these tools could be used to remove insects for study without damaging a microecosystem. I think this entry is actually the opposite of a lot I've put on here today. It's something that looks terrifying and strange, but is actually relatively harmless and may actually have some good uses. But then again, going back to the outside, learning how to manipulate dead bodies is strange. And like a lot of entries in this iceberg, the thought of making the animal to human jump is just terrifying. I guess all we can do is hope that that doesn't happen. Digital necromancy. Digital necromancy, broadly, is the idea of combining any sort of technology, frequently incorporating artificial intelligence, to produce the husk of a loved one who's passed away. Creators of these imitations of humans can then work through grief with that person, or otherwise experience whatever else they want to do with that person. Now, this could be useful in some limited applications. In limited doses, it might help people work through grief. It might be useful for people with disabilities or the elderly who can't understand their loss and could seek comfort from this type of technology. The thing is, though, knowing people, they get carried away. When this technology gets to be good, like really good, which it will, we'll be able to create a simulation of a person that can replicate answers in the exact same way that the dead person would have. And I think it would end up being extremely detrimental for the grief process, denying people an actual opportunity to let go, and probably even worsening psychological problems instead of making them better. Also, take a second to think about this being used for notorious purposes. If we can make this technology work positively, we can make it work negatively. Imagine someone manipulating your person into telling you horrible things. Imagine you're being tortured and someone brings back your dead wife just to tell you that she's leaving you. It seems like something the human brain shouldn't have to experience. Mammalian virgin births. Parthenogenesis, or literally virgin birth, is exactly what it sounds like. It's something that can happen when a female animal can't find a mate or is otherwise extremely stressed, and it's seen in animals like Komodo dragons, for example. Now, the thing about parthenogenesis is it doesn't work in mammals. That was until recently when it was achieved in a lab for the first time using mice, and it actually worked fairly well with one of the mice making it all the way into adulthood. One of the scientists behind this breakthrough explained that under normal circumstances, this type of thing is impossible for mammals due to how genomic imprinting works, but with some epigenetic rewriting, they were able to get around these natural barriers. I thought this was a good example of something to put on the list because, well, at first it just seems like another biological innovation. I tend to think these efforts which reach into creating life unnaturally can be, well, terrifying. I've laid out some of the implications of it throughout this video, which can also make the general point that this could one day happen to humans. If so, what would the consequences be? There's an interesting example of that nearly happening way back in 1995, where a boy in the UK grew up with a very asymmetrical face. His mother had him examined, and lo and behold, he had nearly 0 instances of paternal DNA. He's the closest thing to an asexual human reproduction ever recorded. The boy, known anonymously as FD, did have some minor learning difficulties, but was generally healthy. This goes to show that someone could survive off this type of genetic makeup if this were to happen to humans. One day we could be doing this thing with people, and though I can't quite explain why, it doesn't sit well with me. Prison sentence drugs. This entry refers to a fairly old concept which has been brought up here and there, hinting at the idea that a prisoner could experience a long prison sentence via drug induction, without actually jailing them for an oppressive period of time. I'm not a neuroscientist, but I can throw out there the very basic detail that time manipulation in one's brain generally has to do with the neurotransmitter GABA and also attention and emotion. And in general, these variables get super complicated and make it appear, to me at least, that there's no path forward to actually make this idea happen. That said, that doesn't eliminate this idea as a threat to civil liberties. One person really advocating for this is a philosopher at Oxford University named Rebecca Roach, who's written a bunch of literature, such as a paper called Cyborg Justice, Punishment in the Age of Transformative Technology, taking the position that some crimes are just too heinous for large prison sentences of, say, 30 years to atone for, and instead we should be using drugs to make prisoners live out 1,000-year sentences. This is generally accepted to be, well, problematic. And I'd say this would never make its way past the 8th Amendment in my country, at least. But just because this idea can't exist perfectly doesn't mean it might not sneak up on us. It might start small, with drugs designed to make one uncomfortable or something. If this ever were to come to pass, as apparently some people do want it to, and as neuroscience develops further and further, it would certainly qualify as a man-made horror. Gorilla videos. Okay, this entry has nothing to do with videos of gorillas. It's just kind of a point I wanted to make about online content and attention spans and whatnot. I don't know, I just felt like it made sense here. A bunch of zoos, such as the Toronto Zoo, have had to come out and ask people to stop showing gorillas content on their phones because it upsets them. It modifies their behavior and makes them less social, mostly due to the fact that they'll stop interacting with those around them just to sit there and watch the videos. It's kind of a meta thing, I guess, and points out quite hilariously that maybe phone content is getting a bit addicting. I'm not going to turn this into a drag on social media, but I will point out that I think short-form content is a big problem for our attention spans and how we interact with others. And, well, so do some zoo curators, apparently. Meat grown from human tissue samples. Like I said earlier, I have no problem with the very, very general idea of eating lab-grown meat. If it tastes the same, reduces animal cruelty, is cheaper and better for the environment, and can sustain the same cultural and social norms that regular food does, great. However, I think one might agree that this isn't necessarily the way this technology will be implemented. One slight thing I wanted to mention in this entry is that Fight Labs tried to, back in 2014, create meat like this infused with the DNA of celebrities. Not much has come out of this company since then, I think they aren't around anymore, but this picture really made the rounds back in the day and was super popular with this meme. To be honest, I know for a fact that people would buy this. It's definitely baby steps on the way to just like straight up cannibalism, and I really prefer that this just didn't exist. transplanting memories. Being able to transplant a memory into someone would be pretty freaking insane. The idea that you could genuinely make someone think something happened which didn't could have crazy ramifications. You can manipulate politics, corporations, religions, you can create sleeper agents, or totally upend someone's philosophy and sense of self. So is that actually feasible? Well, there are generally two ideas of making this happen, either by genuinely chemically planting a memory inside someone's head or inducing it psychologically. The latter has been done frequently. By manipulating details, pain, using leading questions, and other forms of communication, you could pretty reliably make someone believe in something that didn't happen. But what I'm asking is, could you actually plant like an MP4 file in someone's head? Hopefully not, but we're working on it. Just a few years back, scientists were able to demonstrate the most basic instance of transplanting memories by making a non-conditioned snail behave like a conditioned one, after taking RNA from inside the latter and giving it to the former. Here's a more detailed explanation. Scientists condition snails to react much quicker by shocking them. It's a process that produces a fairly reliable result. You shock the snail, and over time it gets jumpy and stays jumpy for a while. They did this, then removed DNA from that snail and put it into one that hadn't been conditioned at all, and that new snail ended up displaying the conditioned behavior. So essentially, this quote-unquote memory is just a relic of very basic conditioning. The snail ingested this memory and modified its behavior accordingly. If that were to make the animal human jump, we would be in gigantic trouble. It's a terrifying precedent. Productive dreams. Throughout this iceberg, we're digging into this vein of corporations seizing every dollar from you that they can, sucking the pleasure out of their lives while maximizing productivity, and this is a great example of that. This idea has been put out by some and is actually being looked into by a startup called Prophetic. It suggests that one could lucid dream and then work in their sleep. Lucid dreaming is fun, I'm sure, but imagine a work culture which encouraged or pushed having to get things done while you're literally sleeping. A world where sleep literally cannot be a reprieve from working, as it has been for all human history. The idea that anyone would want this is insane to me. I guess in a perfect world where I could get the physical benefits of sleep and still like do my thing, I'd take it, but the idea that corporate culture could be in control of that sounds terrible. The workday would just double. Will this happen? Probably not. But I can tell you right now that if I get a Teams notification at 2 a.m. and I have to pause my slumber to answer an email in the middle of my sleep, then I'm gonna build my very own cabin in the woods, if you know what I mean. Virtual children. Combining our discussions about AI and going down a similar path as the entry regarding simulating dead people, consider having virtual children. A new idea that's been suggested with regards to where AI might be heading is this idea of giving people fake kids to raise that actually learn and grow up like real ones, but are powered by artificial intelligence. Would that be fun? Sure. Would it be having to carry around a baby doll for your high school sociology class? Maybe. Could it be used as population control by the government? Probably. It sounds like it has the potential to be manipulated, and it just feels really wrong to me. You shouldn't be robbed of authentic experiences just because AI can do them the same way or even better. It takes the human out of living life and should be avoided as much as possible. I don't see a world where virtual children would ever be necessary. Plastic in my blood. Did you know that you probably have microplastic in your blood? I'm serious. Your blood, your bowels, your heart all probably have plastic in them. At least scientists have found examples of people with this. And in one study, every artery study had at least some. I'm not going to preach about literally. I would hope you don't do that, but we are reaching an endgame when it comes to plastic pollution. If this does result in public health crises, which it probably will, everyone could fall victim to it. To some extent, all these sci-fi ideas I've brought up pale in comparison to how terrifying the amount of plastic garbage we generate every year is. So yeah, remember that every time you use some plastic unnecessarily, it is crawling around inside of you, so it probably got the last laugh. The ocean is on fire. This ever refers to a few incidents of the ocean lighting on fire from gas pipeline bursts, and it's more a way to open the door of discussion to us not caring for the environment, like, at all. I think the ocean being on fire is a perfect irony for, I don't know, maybe just not dumping garbage and oil and all this shit into the planet. I'm not the right person to make an eloquent commentary on this, but it did just terrify me. Monetize everything. We are approaching a world where it costs money to do literally anything. Every game you play has microtransactions. Every app you use for the most basic features costs money. If you want your $60,000 BMW to warm your ass cheeks on a dreary winter night, you'll need to pay a subscription for it. This is another much more philosophical entry, and though this doesn't pose bodily danger, I find it no less terrifying to imagine a world where it costs money not just to survive, but merely to exist in any given space at any given time, and partake in literally any convenience. You will own nothing and be happy. We've talked about subscriptions and problematic purchasing models, but at least those things are pumped out by companies that can be boycotted and flamed on social media and whose ways stand to change. This phrase that I'm talking about is pretty famous, coming from a World Economic Forum video, originating from a Dutch economist essay, which basically suggests that in the future, everything will be shared services. There's no clear, obvious framework for this, but it's just reflecting the idea that we're owning less and less. Maybe your clothes will be a subscription service. Everything will be shared. Maybe provided by the government, maybe by powerful companies, who knows and who cares. It's a dystopian thing to see just how excited these wealthy economists and politicians are about this, because you just know this is only going to be something that affects the middle and lower classes. There are some places that this kind of could work in small quantities, but what this concept could lead to if fully implemented is extremely disastrous. Torment Nexus. Ending off this video, we have a phrase that's really guided my entire point today. The Torment Nexus isn't one thing. It's the concept of humans creating something they know is objectively dystopian and scary, but makes money or satisfies curiosity or whatnot. The term originated from this tweet, which basically poked fun at the habit of people to create things that have been frequently warned against in science fiction, or other words of art was trying to warn us of scary things. Plenty of things on this list have been prophesied by artists and writers, and when they came out, people frequently recognized these things are scary and could lead to bad consequences. But here we are, making virtual reality systems integrated into our brains, or extremely powerful AI technology, or whatever it might be. Our ability to ignore our own warnings is nothing but a classic and excessively human thing, and I find it hilarious in a terrifying way. So to conclude this video, try not to create the Torment Nexus, and don't support the people who inevitably will. Okay guys, I had a ton of fun making this quick video. It was a strange lead into crazy ideas. Crazy sometimes in the sense that they're so outlandish, but also crazy in the sense that they seem so destructive and problematic that I can't fathom their existence, and yet I have to, because they're coming. Like I said, I'm not a philosopher, so I won't conclude this video in any wise manner.
Of course, some jams. At this point in time, I was in my indie rock phase, typical vacations, plums, Vansire. It was good vibes all around until that fateful recommendation piqued my interest, figuring a click as it stood pretty obviously to the side of the tab. It was a song by the name Mr. Kill Myself. An otherwise droning piece of music exemplified by atmospheric drums. I was hooked. After a few minutes on Google, I came to the conclusion that what I was listening to was none other than breakcore, a niche internet genre, or at least that's what I thought it was. Now, before you click off the video, what I was listening to was not actually breakcore, and my perception of it was misconstrued by what I thought I was listening to. Everything with a breakbeat was considered breakcore, from video game OSTs to any regular jungle piece. But for a good chunk of time, I didn't know that. For some context, let's go back to the year in 2022. At that point, music I was listening to was already heavily inspired by the Late Night Scroll, already amassed a pretty big playlist of quote-unquote breakcore music. I was silently following online artists on Twitter, and I was even catching on to the memes. So, with my newfound interest, I did the good old video treatment, whipping out together a script and immediately getting to work on some editing. March 26th, I uploaded a video called Breakcore, the internet's craziest genre, using the same girl in the thumbnail video that first got me music. As it grew within the algorithm, it festered into probably my biggest and yet most controversial video. I got a lot of love from that video, and it was the only one where I received numerous encouraging DMs. People thanked me for creating the video. They wanted to strike up a good conversation about the genre, but on the other side of the spectrum, a lot of criticism was festering without me knowing. Obviously, no one could tell me that I'm wrong to my face, so a few tweets and some backlash later, I was feeling pretty mixed on this video, and so that's why I stopped making them, because frankly, I hated what I just made. I hated everything I made, because after some deep retrospection, I became the thing I never wanted to become, another pseudo-intellectual video essayist. Some pretentious guy talking about everything he did because he was involved in it for a brief period of time. I misrepresented many genres of music. I didn't properly get my thoughts across on Sweet video. A funk video I did was full of research holes. I even had a generic death grips video essay that every fake smart guy created. So I do it, and I swore to myself that I would never make another video until I redeemed myself on the topic of breakcore. So here's what I found. One of the oldest questions posted on the genre of breakcore is, well, what is breakcore? I wasn't the first guy to think of this, as an old SoulSeek thread asked the exact same question. It essentially recorded conversations of various enthusiasts of the genre. You had some direct answers, some sillier ones, and just some straight up insane answers. A few conversations archived here and there, but the responses told me more about the culture than the genre itself.
I would say it's sort of halfway between Gabba and jungle. I would probably define it has elements of both of those things. I would say that constitutes breakcore. I think it's kind of one of those things where you know when you hear it. If that makes sense.
Well, I think this is probably the most complicated question I could ask. I think no one really knows at this point. I think like even back when I started, it was like really, like it became like a sort of meme in like breakcore groups to be like, so what is breakcore? People like argue over it, and that was in like 2011, 2012.
I came to a similar conclusion when I watched the infamous documentary Notes on Breakcore. The description of the video essentially told me that breakcore was an amalgam of various genres in the electronic scene. This was one of the many opinions that floated throughout the otherwise laid-back production style of the documentary. A lot of lax interviews and little substance regarding the definition of the genre itself. I was going to familiarize myself with the spirit and the people of the genre rather than the genre itself. It came to me that this question asking what breakcore was a bit fruitless when asking for just a straight left definition. A lot of people claim that breakcore is simply a fast EDM genre with breakbeats, experimental instrumentation, and high BPM. The problem is that definition can also be used to describe hectic jazz works, which features fast breakbeats, experimental instrumentation, and high BPM. In a landscape so full of uncertainty, there is one thing that we can be pretty sure of, which is the first quintessential breakcore album. Alec Empire is a special case, and 1996's The Destroyer is one of the many different sounding albums in this long self-accomplished discography. But what made The Destroyer so different was its extreme breakbeats and abrasive sampling. It's an angry, fast-paced, high-energy album that does its due diligence to smack the listener upon first listen. There's an underlying punk attitude to The Destroyer that shouldn't really be surprising for Mr. Empire, since his band Atari Teenage Riot has been producing hardcore punk music since '92. It is possible that the anti-establishment attitude of Atari Teenage Riot fused its way into The Destroyer, thus giving it a signature sound compared to more contemporary works later down that line. Keep in mind that jungle, gabber, and various other EM influences on The Destroyer were not invented by Alec Empire. Alec did not in fact invent breakcore. In fact, a lot of the other artists at the time were also experimenting with these genres. It should also be noted that Alec Empire wanted this genre to be called digital hardcore. Digital to denote the EM elements matched with the rambunctious punk nature of hardcore music. It makes more sense to look at The Destroyer as an essential landmark album in the scene that was starting to develop. Earlier works of his, such as digital hardcore or bass could be accredited for the feat. Alec's ideas of creating a crazier style of EM wasn't an original idea either. Many people argue that great pioneers such as DJ Scud truly finalized the sound. Other artists were also pushing the extremes of the sound back then, such as Christoph de Babylon and Mouse and Blue. But according to other sources, although this point in time can be described as the infantile stages of breakcore, we don't really get to see its contemporary version until later down the line. This is Each Kurt's Guide to Electronic Music, an extremely detailed timeline encompassing all of electronic music, its genres, and even its respective subgenres. It's an ambitious project that has been worked on by a dedicated lot of enthusiasts, powered by their own first-hand accounts in the electronic scene, and a lot of time on Discogs. And upon first glance, the most interesting part about the placement of breakcore on the timeline was its apparent offshoot from the IDM genre, being a product of the drill and bass movement. Ironically enough, IDM is probably an even harder genre to categorize, since it isn't bound by a specific set of production rules, and the quote-unquote intelligent moniker is highly relative. But even if you listen to a lot of contemporary breakcore, you'll notice that IDM may not be its sole influence. Breakbeat hardcore and split-offs such as jungle and gabber was where the chaos in the music was first considered. Breakcore would somewhat pick and choose elements from these vast cultures to define its sound. For example, the ragged jungle sound was very much alive and well within popular breakcore artists. Shitmat's One Foot in the Rave very much leans on its ragged jungle influences, while artists such as Venetian Snares have multiple albums peppered with reggae sampling. It's also safe to say that there are even more genres that have influenced the sound of breakcore, gabber being a notable example. Some artists have incorporated even industrial and metal sounds into their music, such as drumcore. All of this points back as to why Ishkur puts breakcore as a successor of drill and bass and IDM. To put it in no better words, drill and bass was IDM mixed with drum and bass. Breakcore, its successor, is IDM mixed with hardcore, with some industrial seasoning and fresh metal pace. IDM is an essential element to creating breakcore. And although hardcore artists such as Alec Empire could have gotten close and accidentally making it, the drill and bass influences come in from none other than huge names such as Aphex Twin and Square Butcher, where their works oftentimes blur the line between the end of drill and bass and the beginning of breakcore.
Well, I mean, breakcore started as like a very political music genre, like in the 90s. Like it was extremely political, like sort of like counterculture, like punk kind of thing, So in that sense, I think that that definitely used to be true. But then once it has